Welcome, everyone. I am Natalie Bedamu. I am the founder of Her C-Suite, where ambitious women meet, engage, and thrive in meaningful ways. Together, we create an ecosystem where we're helping women advance in the entirety of the arc of their career. And that's what we're going to be talking about today with our incredible panel. I cannot wait for you to hear our panel today. I'm also, by the way, I also am a podcast host, in case you've heard me on Her C-Suite Radio, Women Leaders on the Move, and I am president of Her Health X, a nonprofit focused on helping improve outcomes for women's health. Today is going to be the best part of your day. I promise you, this conversation, you're going to walk away being so glad that you heard the conversation. We are recording today because we know that there's some people that aren't able to join us, and we want to make it available for everyone because this is going to be so valuable. I am so excited to welcome our panel today. So get ready, and I'm going to introduce each of the panelists, but I'm going to not do their bio. You saw the bio on Eventbrite, and they are going to be sharing their backgrounds. So I want to be sure that we have enough time to have a meaningful conversation. We curated these amazing women together. Naomi Kent, our board's chair, and I got together and said, how can we create an event that is really good, not only for all of you who are attending today, but for our panelists? We want everyone to have a great experience. So we wanted to bring together 4 industries, which is unique, and hear from different perspectives so that you can engage and thrive and advance in your career. And I'm thrilled that we have an audience filled with men and women, because we need everyone together for executive sponsorship. That is what we're going to talk about today, and the secrets behind how executive sponsors and sponsees do a great job. I'm excited to welcome our panel today. First, I'm going to introduce Jackie Ardrey. She is the CEO of Vera Bradley, Inc. I can't wait for you to hear her stories, and she's going to have incredible, valuable insights. Next, I'm going to introduce you to Blasine Penkowski, and I have to pause here for a second, because Blasine and I have known each other for a long time, and she was my first personal board. She was on my first personal board advisors. I created this little advisory group 12 years ago. And I was starting a new company and at a new company, and I didn't know how to build and scale in the marketplace. And Blasine was kind enough to come and give me advice. And it was the catalyst to make me think we really are the result of the people that we surround ourselves with. And that's why today's event is created as a meeting, because we want you to meet, engage, and thrive, and be able to create your own advisors like I did years ago. And so grateful to Blasine for being here and being a mentor to me all these years. I'm going to introduce you to Amanda Blevins. She is an incredible leader. She's vice president and CTO Americas at BMC Software, and has incredible stories from the tech sector. So you're going to hear, again, this rounded experiences from different areas. And last, I want to introduce you to Liesl Schmidt. She's Chief Operating Officer at River Valley Community Bank. I know that we're going to have so much to talk about, so let's get started with our panel today. I'm going to start with Liesl, because you gave a story that really stuck with me. And I was like, that you really went above and beyond for this one. So imagine that you want to have to have access, and you have a story about going and driving 8 hours to gain access to a sponsor. So can you talk a little bit about that? And I know there was a book involved about how to ditch the mentor and you have a sponsor, and that's what matters. But can you talk about that experience and what made you do that? Because that's incredible.
Sure. So first of all, thank you very much for having me today. And I feel very honored to be a part of this panel. So thank you. And I'm looking forward to hearing from everyone again. So yes, one time I had an opportunity to meet my boss's boss, who was going to be new to the group. And in order for me to do that, I was going to have to drive 8 hours. And I'll be honest, I didn't want to do it at first, but my husband, who's always been my biggest cheerleader, said, hey, probably important for you to take this opportunity. So the book that you were referring to, which is Find a Sponsor, Forget a Mentor. In that book, there's a number of things that they talk about. And then over the course of time through my learning, this kind of was the perfect storm for all of those. So the first is opportunity. When you get the opportunity, you've got to take it. Even if it's going to be a little bit of a hardship. So it's really important to recognize that and take that moment. And then building a network is so critical in what we do and in moving forward, whether it's to get promoted or to find that perfect opportunity outside of work, just to make those connections to make sure that you have that network, no matter what it is that you're looking for at that given moment. And then building a reputation, I think, is really important, and getting in front of different people is critical to that. But also that in this case, my boss had invited me to this because I think he was trying to make a good impression too on his new boss, that, hey, my group will come together, we're collaborative, we get along. And so this gave me the opportunity to support my boss and also to build that new, to be able to meet somebody new and expand my network. And then increasing your arenas. At this point in time in my career, I was very well known in my company in the West, but it was a huge corporation across the entire United States. And this was going to give me the opportunity to meet someone that would be in a different part of the company, or that had a bigger exposure. And then lastly is exposure. How many times do we hear, hey, I'm working hard, I did a great job, I met all my numbers, I did everything that the organization asked me to do, and they still passed me over, or I got lost in a reorg, or I lost my job. And while doing a good job is important, you have to get exposure to the people that are making the decisions, and to people that are beyond your normal sight. And so I think that is always a critical piece. So whenever you can get in front of someone, take the opportunity.
So amazing. I think that's the longest I've ever heard of anyone going out of their way to do something like that. And it's really inspirational, I think, for our listeners here today to understand that if you want to make that leap, there might be things like that you have to make choices on and do. And how great that your husband encouraged you and you had someone around you that would encourage you. And I know that when you think about, the times, it just really, it resonates. I'm sure that story is going to really resonate with our listeners here and our attendees here today. And the next thing I'm thinking about is what it's like when people approach you to ask you, how do you, I'm going to ask Blasine, what has it been like to have employees approach you for sponsorship, and why is it so important? And your journey has been really meaningful. And I want you to talk a little bit about that too, because you have such a personal story about how a sponsor really helped you in your career.
So thanks, Natalie. Let me tell you a little background. So I started my career as a chemical engineer, did that for about 4 years, and then went to grad school and was recruited by Abbott Laboratories, a pharmaceutical company. And I was in their development program, was moving along. My perception, I saw people have sponsors, but I didn't know anybody could have a sponsor. And it looked at the time, and this will reveal a little bit of age, but it was a little bit more male oriented at the time. And so I didn't, I had mentors, but I didn't think that this was really something for me. It wasn't something I thought I needed at the time, but I had a really good partnership with a colleague, and we were both pregnant back to back. And then I came back from leave, and my husband got a job in another state. And I thought, well, I'm going to have to quit because my job really wasn't situated for remote commuting at the time. That was very unusual. And I had marketing, and this person had national accounts. And so I was just, as a friend, kibitzing, and she said, no, I'll switch jobs with you. We got to stay together. We're like this great team. And I was like, you would do that? And we went to my boss and he was just floored. And he was a very strong mentor of mine and he let us do it. Fast forward 6 months to a year, I was traveling and I had this new child who was afraid to stay alone at home with me. She cried if her dad wasn't around and it was very distressing. So again, I'm like, oh, I'm going to have to find a different way and quit. At this point, she had been promoted to my boss. And when I reached out and said, hey, I'm having this issue, I think I'm going to have to resign to, this is so important to me. I waited a long time to have a child. And she said, absolutely not. I'm going to create a job because 50% of you is 90% of most of my people. And so she pulled me through and let me go part-time. So here I am remote in a different state and I'm part-time. And I did that for a couple of years. And then, some reorg started and she pulled me back as a vice president. And, that's just shocking overall. But that kind of sponsorship was so important that it really made my career. I mean, that person really pulled me along, gave me opportunities, made sure I'd stayed in contact. And I'm just forever grateful for her friendship and her sponsorship. And later I moved to Johnson & Johnson. And I would like to share that it is very much J&J's culture for people to seek out sponsorships and mentors. It is not unusual for a junior person to come in and say, hi, this is who I am. I'd like to get to know you. And if there's a connection, then they start asking more to be, for you to mentor or to sponsor or to help them through. And, that was shocking. And it was also made clear that was expected of senior leaders, which I really admire. J&J's got a wonderful culture. There's things I can tell you guys that just blew me away. But it's very much a norm. And I would encourage you as a young person, take the opportunity, reach out. I mean, Lisa that was a great opportunity presented to you, but you can make your opportunities. And your boss is a great way to say, hey, I'd like to meet that person. I might like to work for them. What would be a good topic for me to talk about? So I think you can make some of those opportunities, but luck is being ready when the opportunity's there and taking it.
And it's so powerful, Blasine, what you're sharing, because I know there's a lot of people in the audience, whether they're, moms or dads. I mean, dads also have, these choices to make, but especially the weight of the world and deciding and thinking like, well, I have to just take a step back, and how wonderful that she was like, no, come with me.
Yeah.
I love that story because that's the way we should all be towards everyone equally, but especially. So thank you for sharing that story. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of people, and there's people sharing in the chat. So I don't know if you're reading it, but I'll read. I will share it for you. I will share it later. So it's amazing. So thank you for sharing that story. I'm going to move on to Amanda, who also has a different experience, but you forged a strong relationship as a CFO advisor, and that kind of helped you. It did help you in your career. What was that like, and how did that sponsor really step in for you and transform what you were going to be doing next?
Yeah, to add on to what Blasine said and Lisa said, one, you make your own luck. I really like the saying, the harder you work, the luckier you get. Might be attributed to Thomas Jefferson or maybe somebody else, but also that exposure is so important. So I already had the hard work part, and I had just joined a different organization inside my past employer, VMware. I was about 6 years into my career there. And I was just starting to be trying to raise up my level to reach a CTO. And so I started working in the office of the CTO, and our company had a new CFO just come in from the outside. And the CFO was looking for a technical advisor. So this didn't even start as like a sponsorship or a mentorship or anything like that. And my boss, the CTO, recommended to the CFO, why don't you work with Amanda? She has, a good viewpoint. So I started meeting with the CFO regularly and was able to share, the customer view, internal R&D work, all types of things that he wasn't normally exposed to. But then I also got to learn about the financial side of the business because that isn't my background. I've always been a technologist. And that went really, really well. So not only did I have one sponsor that, raised me to another sponsor eventually, then I had multiple folks, at the e-staff level where they're able to speak to other people. So when it was time for me to, go to the next level and go to the next level in the company, um, everyone already knew what I could do. And so that's the exposure part that's so important that goes along with that hard work. And so then fast forward to a couple years later when I was looking at joining BMC Software, the CFO had gone to another company, but we stayed in touch. And I reached out to him and I said, hey, are you open for a quick 15-minute conversation? And so we got on each other's calendars and I said, sorry to ask you two questions and maybe a couple favors right away instead of, going to lunch and catching up. But I'm looking at this company, BMC Software. What do you think? What's your experience? What kind of, do you know the folks that are there and how are they and how's the company? And he gave me some great insight there. And then I also asked if he'd be willing to be a reference for me in that process. And he was all on board and ready to do it. And so I think it's important to note that sponsorships not only work within a point in time in your career in a single company, but as people move through their careers, they'll branch out to other organizations and you'll have a great network of people that can support you across the globe.
So true. And I think when you think about it, it's externally those relationships, like I alluded to earlier with Blasine and I mean, that is really the power of harnessing our networks. And it's really important to keep that up. So I hope you're all connecting. You're all seeing each other in the chat. For this program, we want you to be connecting and engaging because of this, because it's so important. And that relationship and also being able to go to someone for advice. I mean, you shared, I think that's really a key. And I know Jackie's going to share that experience too. But Jackie, before we get to that, I know you had a different experience where you may not have been ready to look for a sponsor. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like before you kind of moved into the role of, okay, now I'm ready for a sponsor?
Yeah, absolutely. And I love hearing everyone's stories. And, I think one of the things we all have in common is that, eventually we all leaned in and said yes to the idea that an executive sponsor was the right thing for us. But earlier in my career, and it's one of my regrets actually, is that I really wasn't mature enough to ask for that sponsorship or mentorship. And I'm kind of being vulnerable with the audience because I think it's really important. All of you who are on the call are likely, you're well ahead of that curve because you are here and you're listening. But I really thought that it showed weakness or exposed that I didn't know something. And I think that fear prevented me earlier in my career from asking for it. And so, or I thought I didn't have the time, but I think overall, I was really reluctant to ask for the feedback that I really needed. And that's part of having this relationship. So you have to be ready and you have to be able to accept feedback to have that mentor or sponsorship relationship. But because I didn't have a sponsor, I wasn't getting the feedback that I needed to succeed. And instead, I mean, I was very fortunate that I had a peer who did that for me. And it's again, this is a story I tell all the time, and it's a vulnerable story for me. It was really brave of her. She took me out to coffee one time and said, she told me that I wasn't letting anyone have any other air in the room and that basically I was being a jerk. And that was, that was a long time ago. And that really set my career on a different course and allowed me to be so much of a better leader because I thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, but I really wasn't. I wasn't leading a team. I was leading myself. And so, now I have a coach and a board and a group of CEOs, and I get lots of feedback all the time. And so that's one of the things I think that's been most important is learning how to take that feedback I think it's part of, it's become a key part of my leadership superpower. No one's afraid to give me feedback because I thoughtfully and thankfully accept it. Now I might not always act on it, but it's, if people feel comfortable giving you feedback, whether that's a peer or a mentor or a sponsor, you're going to get a lot more insight to your behavior and to things that you might not even be aware of. But you have to be approachable and somebody who can take that. So additionally, like my CEO peer network is a really invaluable group now that helps me gauge performance, whether I'm missing anything important in retail, talk about talent, AI, we talk about the competitive threats of Shein and Temu, all of that. And the important part of those relationships is that I'm always showing up as myself. It's not a competitive environment. It's about sharing and learning. So it still is, I have regularly scheduled CEO peer calls throughout the month that are really also mentoring calls. So we're all mentoring each other about our different approaches to retail situations. So if I could boil all that down, I would say, ask for feedback. Don't be afraid, and then develop a peer network for yourself as well, so that you can get some of that feedback that you might not be getting from anyone else. But above all, don't be afraid. And if you're ready, and if you're on this call and you're listening, you likely are not afraid, but get ready to take that next step.
I'm so glad you said that, Jackie, because we have some questions in the chat, and I'm going to hold the questions for a little bit longer because we are actually going to cover some of these questions in our conversation today. And anything we don't, I'm monitoring, and I promise you we'll get to some of them, or we may also do it in our follow-up. But I think what you were talking about just a moment ago about that mentorship, that peer mentoring is really valuable too. There's the sponsor that's behind the scenes, maybe in your company or external, like Amanda talked about, but can give you advice. But then also you need that peer-to-peer conversation. You need that advice, right? To be able to kind of bounce ideas off in a safe space, which I'm guess that's, what I was hearing from you, Jackie, about that, which I think is so important. And as we think about mentorship and sponsorship, a lot of people get confused about that. And Amanda's going to share a little bit about why it's important to know the difference, because it does impact the amount of time that leader will spend versus, so I'll let you answer the rest of that question and talk a little bit about that, about mentorship versus sponsorship, because I think people get confused a little bit.
No, that's a great lead in, and the time component is interesting to think about. So when I think about mentorship, to me, it is somebody that's looks up to someone or sees someone around them that has something that they want. Not like a job or a title, maybe it's that, but more of like a set of skills, whether it's soft skills, ability to speak to someone, ability to understand things, ability to run a business. And so in a mentorship, it's looking for somebody that has these qualities that I want to develop. And then I reach out to folks that have those qualities and see if they'd be willing to help teach me. And so that's generally what I see as a mentorship. Now, mentorships can evolve into sponsorships, of course, because if you have a mentor and you are doing the hard work and they're impressed, well, then they are going to tell other people. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to go in steps of mentorship and sponsorship. You can go to just sponsorship too, but then that does require the work of whatever that sponsor might ask of you. So a lot of that will be, understanding your background, understanding where you want to go. And then that person can help decide, am I able to assist this person? Do I have the right circles where I can provide that leg up, that boost to them that they need in the career? Because it's important to note that most decisions are made about promotions or hiring or opportunities when you're not in the room. It's when everybody else is talking about it. So that's why that sponsor is so important. And you want the sponsors that will be in the room, because then they will bring you up. They will talk about all the great things that you do and you have. And one other thing I just want to add before closing this out is that everyone has a brand. Whether you know it or not, whether you worked on it proactively or not, you have this brand. And so if you want to enter a mentorship, you want to enter a sponsorship, and you show up and you say, how can you help me? And this person, you know, dedicates their time to doing so, and you don't put the hard work in, well, then you have solidified your brand as somebody that doesn't follow through, somebody that didn't take this seriously. So it might backfire if you're looking for a sponsor and then you don't do the work. Yes, they're going to be in the room, and then this is they're going to, you know, they'll share their opinion and experience of you. So definitely be serious and take it seriously when you go through these processes.
And I think that that is so valuable. Is one of the things when early on, I had an amazing mentor, not sponsor, but a mentor, but she was sort of a sponsor too. She was a Woman of the Year, which for HBA, Healthcare Businesswomen Association, very high level. And I was always prepared and nervous for every call. I was like, oh my God, I have to be prepared. I have to know what I'm going to say. And I did. I sent an agenda ahead of time and all those things. And I know we're going to talk about that a little bit with Blasine today, because I think being prepared is one of the key things of knowing. And also as a leader, I'm sure, Amanda, you would agree with this, that it's really rewarding when you see people follow through. And
Yes.
it's also disheartening when they don't.
Yes.
So Blasine, can you share a little bit about that? Because I know you have a whole system of both being a sponsor and what sponsees can do to be effective.
Definitely. You know, there's a couple things that I ask people to do, whether they come to me as just to get started as a mentor or a sponsor. And that is really to outline their career, like look back. What were the moves? Why were the moves? Kind of do an assessment. We did this once in HBA, one of our programs, where you do like a look back. And why did you make the moves that you did? What was the family situation? What were the issues? But also, why did you like this job? Why didn't you like that job? So you can really say, what do I like and what don't I like in a job? And then where do I want to go? Where do I want to be? Because different jobs will give you different paths. If you stay in specialized, that's great, but it's gonna put you maybe at a limit of how high you can go. Whereas helping people see that if you take lateral moves, you could probably go a lot higher. Plus you get to know a lot more people. And then kind of the second step is, once they understand themselves, is okay, let's explore your opportunities. What if you want to be you know, a president of a business in 3 to 5 years? What do you need to do to get there? What's going to make you the most competitive? You got to look at your competition. You can't just look at, okay, well, I check 5 of the boxes. Well, people might have checked 7 of the boxes and done 3 other things, international, stepped out of their mainstream and did a finance like Amanda did, coming from technology. So, you know, part of that is helping set up meetings and say, well, why don't you go talk to Jackie because she's done that before? Or, you know what, you might want to spend some time with Amanda because technology is going to be a big part of our business and you need to learn that. And I think, you know, having them go and then say, okay, what'd you get out of that meeting? And sometimes it's like, you know what, that's a great person for you to follow up with. Let's talk about your next couple of conversations and we'll sketch them out so they have something to go back in with. And part of that is, what are you going to give back to them? You know, what do you know, how are you going to say, I might be a great employee for you without saying it? And then at some point asking, like, hey, would I be really competitive? What do I need to do to be competitive on a slate for one of these jobs that I think I could do in your organization? And it does take some role playing, and it does take some thinking and prep and helping them pull out, okay, well, what in your background might make you a great candidate for that? You can't just leave it. You have to work it, because every job you're going to call out a different facet, maybe the same example, but a different facet of it. And I think, you know, that's part of this start. Now, if somebody doesn't follow up on those conversations, that's where maybe you fall back and do a mentor touch base every once in a while. But I did want to reiterate what Jackie said, because be resourceful in who you surround yourself with, whether it's experts. You know, if you use consultants, you know what, they'll talk to you. They don't have to get paid every 5 minutes, and you're giving back to them with your thoughts and what your priorities are and how do you see things. And then there's just the pure women friends that bolster you. So HBA was that for me at a critical time in my life and career, where those women rallied me. And while they weren't there to tell me which job to take, they gave me confidence. They made me feel so good about myself. And you need all of those. You need your experts. You need your peers. Join a trade group. Get to know your peers. Start early. Ask somebody if they're the chair, if they sit on that committee. Hey, there's got to be subcommittees. What can I work on? And you'll learn, and you'll it's not just what you have externally, internally, it's what you're bringing externally into the company. So I love what Jackie said, and I just wanted to reinforce it.
I think it's so powerful to that networking piece, and that who you surround yourselves with is really key. And I know Liesl has a really compelling story and a learning about that, about who you're surrounding yourself with. And it might surprise you. Things can happen, right, in our careers. So Liesl, can you share a little bit about what happened and why it's so important to constantly be active with the senior leaders? Don't wait. Go forward.
Yes. As I alluded to earlier, you don't know what's going to always happen in your organization, or even if you suspect that something's going to happen, you need to be very proactive in what you're doing and who you're talking to and who you're networking with. And one of the big mistakes that I made was I had sponsors in what I'll call my direct line. So in my department, I had people who knew me and who worked with me. But then my primary sponsor retired, and I made the assumption that my new boss was also going to be a sponsor. And that was a bad assumption to make because we didn't really connect. We didn't have a great, what I would say, chemistry. I know that might be a weird word to use, but there has to be that level of connection. And so looking back, what I should have done is I should have had multiple sponsors in the company, 2 or 3, and one obviously in my direct line, but also people in other departments. And recently, I actually had a conversation with a woman who was an executive at my prior institution, who I probably should have leveraged during that time, because she, I think, was a sponsor of mine, but I didn't ever really take the time to build that relationship so that I could just call her and say, hey, what's going on? What do I need to do? What should I have done different? And then the other thing that I would just add, the last thing is, building that network within the industry, but outside of your organization, I think is also critical, because there might be a time and place where you do need to leave, or you want to leave, but you need to have that connection with people beyond your organization. And I think sometimes we get comfortable in an organization and we don't push ourselves or challenge ourselves or look beyond that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know some of the questions in the chat were specifically about that, about knowing if you should start in your organization or go outside. Do you have an opinion? I would use the word "and" to quote yes, but what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think that you need to have multiple people in your organization. Of course, it depends how big your organization is, and how many layers there is beyond where you're at, and who you already know. But I think, I will tell you, I was not good at building my network outside of my organization, and that was a big mistake, and probably also has limited me on being able to see the big picture. Right. So I can see what my institution was, what the culture was that I was used to, but what was beyond that. And I really regret that. I regret not having taken more time to build my network beyond my institution.
So key. I think no matter what industry, and that's why we're so thrilled to have 4 industries represented today, because there's synergy in the stories, even though there's diversity in where you are in terms of the world. And I know for Jackie, I know that there are reasons to stay connected, and you have a great story about that, about staying connected with maybe someone from the past that was a sponsor. What happened with you at that?
Absolutely. So I have 2 examples here, both as a sponsor and a sponsee. I I had a situation in my career. I had just joined a company and as an executive, and not long after, a woman asked me to mentor her, and she had been with the company a long time and just hadn't really risen up to her potential. And we had a kind of a feedback session, and at the end of the session, she actually started crying, and I thought, wow, okay, I was quickly sort of racing, like, what did I say did I say something that was, was too direct, or, what was happening here? And she explained that she was crying because she understood the feedback, but no one had ever given it to her. So she just said, I have been waiting for someone to help me understand what I needed to do, but I guess I just never asked, right? So anyway, so she came to me, and we became great partners, and she's kept in touch with me through her career and told me, at different times, like during that relationship, what helped her and what didn't, and how she's using those skills. And that has become enormously helpful for me to say, to hone how I'm talking to other people and how I'm coaching them and how I'm giving people, dependent on their needs and their desires for mentoring, giving them those things. And so I do the same things with my past sponsors, and it's actually become a really fun reflection point for me now. And I devote time once a year to actually communicating with a handful of past sponsors. I try to keep a note, like, so if I'm walking, I don't know if any of you have had this experience in your career, but there's a lot of times when I'll just be walking around and I'm like, you know what? I just said something in that meeting that this person said 15 years ago, and it's stuck in my brain, and I'm still saying it. And I write that down, so that when I do my yearly email, that I kind of reflect on that. So, and I think it's just, it comes from such a place of gratitude, and it's more for me because I'm reflecting on all those things during the year that I've learned and absorbed through my mentors. But it's also, it's kind of circular, because that person then hopefully is motivated by the feedback, and they keep mentoring other people as well. I also have, the benefit of asking then those mentors if there's anything that I can do for them, right? So I check in once a year. If there's several times it's led to conversations with people that they know who could use mentoring with this, about a specific skill set that I have. So I remain available in that way, and remain top of mind. And then the last thing I do is, I just started this, and it's a practice that, again, I like just for myself, but I've started to call people out both in interviews and in LinkedIn comments who have helped me. So something like, thanks for helping me get here, or as an example, just so others, if they're reading comments, that they see it and recognize that we all need other people, and especially other women, to help us up. So in that way, I really like to keep that circle going. And again, it's another thing to do, but I can promise you that the gratitude that you feel, and it's just sort of fun to keep those lists and recognize all the things that, even as a young executive, where you're like, maybe sometimes you roll your eyes a little bit about somebody who says something 10 times, and you're like, wow, I just did that. So it kind of takes you back to, okay, these are the things that I've learned, and how much have I grown since then?
So good. And I just have one kind of question that's coming. I bet others are thinking of this in their mind. Is there a time of year? Do you do it like the beginning of the year? Is it mid-year? Do you do it is it one time that you like have it on your calendar and you do it all at once? Or
I do. I don't choose it. Actually, that's a great idea. It would probably be better if it was more intentional. I usually do it in the summer. And I don't know why. I just started doing it, and then it just became, a yearly reminder. But it might be even more powerful to align it with some particular objectives.
yeah, that's so great. I know that we have a few people in the audience that maybe haven't been at corporate in a while. They might be entrepreneurs or in other roles. And I'm curious, from a more of an entrepreneurial kind of mindset, and it goes to a little bit of that seeking outside advice. And Amanda, you were talking about this earlier, but for people that are maybe, it could be a physician, or it could be you know, someone that might not have a corporate environment like we've been talking about today? What are some suggestions that you might have for them?
Well, I think, you know, like with anything, we have to figure out what our goals are. And so if you are looking to find a sponsor, and it's maybe not in a traditional corporate environment, or maybe your corporation is very, you know, a much smaller organization and there's not a lot of folks to choose from, then you have to think about, what am I trying to achieve? Am I looking to enter another type of industry? Am I looking to climb the ladder and maybe join another company? And so it goes back to what I was talking about before, where you want to look around and see who has what you want, those skills that you're looking for, the knowledge that you're looking for, the capabilities, the position, the company maybe you want to join, and then find people that have those experiences, those characteristics, and reach out to them. And, you know, if you are quote unquote cold calling someone, you know, as a sponsor, and in my experience, people are very open with this and always open a single conversation. But if you're reaching out to folks that you don't know, certainly be very clear about what your intentions are, so they know how to respond, so they know, you know, if they can help. And even if folks can't help, or maybe they don't have time, most often people will recommend other people for you. So, you know, I would say, don't be afraid. The worst response you can hear is no, and then it's the same exact result as if you didn't ask the question anyway. But really be intentional about where you think you want to go. It doesn't have to be the right answer a month from then or 2 months from then. You might start speaking with other people and realize, oh, that's not what I want to do. And that is another benefit of expanding your network and having more sponsors.
So good. I Blasine, you have a question or a comment, not a question. I see the hand raised. I'm like, do you have a question?
No, I just wanted to share because my sister is a retired physician from Cleveland Clinic, and she was a vice chair there. And, you know, I would talk about what we had in the corporate world. And even though it didn't directly apply, you know, I could share. So don't be afraid to contact corporate women, because I think as you talk, and I think Amanda's right, you know, it's about the goals, it's about reading the politics. And, you know, it may not be quite the same, but there's also that political structure in more organized healthcare. And, you know, between your vendors, your hospital administration, you know, your chief physician, you know, you can find people that can help you read situations and make suggestions and give you the feedback. So I just wanted to share that personally, because my sister and I coach each other a lot through our careers. Mostly because your sister can say pretty much anything to you and you're still going to like her in the end. And we've learned how to say things gently to each other. And I actually, when I coach people on how to give feedback, I'm like, picture them as a brother or sister. You want to do it with that much love so that you don't hurt them and that it comes across as a very helpful solution. So just wanted to share on top of that, Natalie.
I love that. And also, I think someone had asked about, is it too late to find a sponsor depending on where you are in your career?
No.
And also, and I know, Blasine, you have this approach of reverse mentoring.
Yeah.
So I think that kind of speaks to this. Can you just elaborate on that a
Sure.
little bit more?
Yeah, my team came up with this, and I took advantage of it. And it was really a tremendous amount of fun and learning. And it started out, you know, with like, okay, I don't know how to use Yammer, which was our new social media. So it was just kind of fun, like, okay, teach me how to do it. But she got, her name is Fizza, and she was like, hey, we want, you know, younger people want more access to you. And I'm like, okay, I'm willing, but I don't know what to do because I feel like I intimidate people when I show up. And, you know, she set up meetings and, you know, coffee sessions, and, you know, there were beers with Blasine, and then there was breakfast with Blasine at some meetings. And it was just, you know, she just got people to sign up. She asked them to set the agenda, and she kind of constructed it. And it really, I ended up sponsoring her and mentoring her. And she also mentored and sponsored me because she could come in and say, you know, people need to hear this from you, or they need, you know, especially we were going into COVID, and how do you stay connected? So it really helped me be better connected to my broader organization that's not in the home office.
So good. So good. I'm encouraging everyone to connect while we're doing this. I think it's really important. So you're hearing about connections, and Blasine was just talking about making a connection internally, but we're also talking about external connections. Lisa, what have you found in the external realm that's helped you in terms of, going forward into the role that you're in right now?
Well, I actually ended up getting the job that I have because of some external connections. A friend of a friend had made a recommendation, and that was how I actually landed the role that I have. But I think more importantly, it's getting, again, the insight of other people and different ways of looking at things and different possibilities for your future career, or how you can help other people. I mean, it feels really good to be able to, when somebody calls you, to be able to say, hey, I have the perfect person for that role. I know the perfect connection for you. I know, it's not always going to be you. It's that probably 90% of the time, it's not going to be you. It's going to be somebody else who you can help. And to me, that I think is the most critical piece. We can only all get where we are with the help of other people and the support of other people. And it's just really important that we do it both ways. And making those external connections really makes a big difference in that.
And building on what you're saying, I know, Jackie, when you stepped into your role, you had, that external support that you were able to leverage, both for what you're doing, but you're at a publicly traded company, you have a board, you talked about it a little bit in the intro. What has that been like for you to be able to make that external? It's so important, those relationships and helping.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was critical for me because although I had been a CEO before, um, transitioning to be the CEO of a public company is something very different. So I found I had to kind of look through my network and find those people who were CEOs of public companies or executives at public companies that could help me, like, just give me some sound bites about, okay, my first 90 days, here's what I'm doing. Tell me, am I missing something, or is there something external? Like, when I start to schedule, like, how I'm going to interact with the external markets, what are the things that, if you look at my results, that you think that I should have my mind on if they're outside of this, of this list? It was critical to have that connection and to have those people to talk to. And I would say, for anyone, I'm seeing some of the questions come up. For anyone who thinks like I did, even as recently as 10, 15 years ago, to think that networking is something that's kind of outside of your time framework, or outside of your, something that, maybe that you just can't do because you have family commitments. I would say, I'm a person, I'm a very family oriented, as I'm sure all of you are. My husband and I talked before we started today, my husband and I coach a high school robotics team. So that's what basically most of my life is outside of work, is coaching this robotics team for most of the year. And so I don't have a lot of necessarily social time or extra time to do all of this, but it is, and I always thought that it would take a long time, or what I had in my head about what networking was and what it actually is completely different. And so I don't know if anybody else is thinking that. I can tell you that I know that that's what I always thought. Gosh, I have 3 kids. I work so much. I travel so much. My work outside of home or my work outside of work is really at home with my family. So I don't know how I can do this. But it really is, time during work, and time that, you spend sometimes, or not sometimes, all the time. I mean, I use my time in the car to schedule calls and things like that, and catch up with people. So they're not taking the time out of my evening, but they're leveraging some of the catch up time that I have that's already idle. So, but it has been so important to develop those networks, and it's so I was able to land in this role and have a good idea of what was coming and what was different than what I was doing before.
I think the people get intimidated by the thought of networking. The word networking, you get the word working in it, and people are like, no, I don't do it. But really, it's just conversation. It's curating conversations with
That's
people
right.
and being curious. I think being
Yeah.
curious about other people and listening, right? I think that really is so key. Have you found anything that helps you in terms of time allotment? Because you've got such a full schedule, like you were saying. Do you, you
Yeah.
know, try to make a priority maybe once a month or, once a quarter? I don't know. I don't
Yeah,
know what it
it's
looks like for
well,
you.
now I do have I have different organizations I'm part of, and then I have 4 specific people who I talk to on a regular basis, and that's monthly, because now that's become part of my work, right? It's not something additional I do. It's become part of my work. So when you think of it like that, it really does help to get over that hurdle. But I also had, for those of you who have young kids, I do remember a special gift that a past sponsor gave to me one time. And I remember I was out at dinner, and I had 3 young kids at home, and I was out at dinner. I'd just come back from maternity leave with my third, and I think we were trying to sell the company at that point, and I had only been back probably for less than a week. And so we were at dinner with another private equity company who was trying to buy us. And I just, as you can probably imagine, I was not very keyed into the conversation. I knew what part of my work and my script that I needed to know. But then we started talking about restaurants and movies, and I didn't have anything to add. I mean, I had obviously been in babyland for quite a few weeks by then, and I was not really paying attention to anything outside. And he did something that I will never forget, because he just said, he turned the attention to me for a minute and just said, you know, Jackie, tell us about what your life has been for, for the last few weeks. I know it must be very different. In that way, it just sort of took the pressure off me because I was feeling very uncomfortable that I couldn't contribute in the conversation. And I so remember that as such a great gift that I try to do that to others as well. When I see if there's a conversation and people aren't connecting, that to try to pull something out so that they feel like they can connect. And then afterwards, he made a point of saying, there's no way that you could possibly have known any of that. So I know you're probably feeling bad that you didn't have anything to say, but you shouldn't, because I mean, he read my mind. Like, I never would have said that to him, but he read my mind. So I think, again, the emotional intelligence, developing that emotional intelligence and looking around and seeing drawing somebody in, inviting them in when they're not talking, because it might be a situation where, their life just, you may not know what's going on, but their life may not be conducive to contributing to that part of the conversation. So change it up, have them be included so that they can kind of show what they can bring as well.
Yeah, Christina mentioned net curious. I love that. I love that description, Christine. It's so accurate. And I'm thinking about for in meetings, because all of us are in meetings, whether you're an entrepreneur or you're at a big company, we're all in meetings. And there are those times, and that's the executive sponsorship piece, that you can be a peer sponsor. Like what you're describing, Jackie, is like this person, without realizing it, was really sponsoring you in that moment to say, where are you? How are you doing? Be curious. And I'm wondering, Amanda, have you had anything like that in what you've been doing with that curiosity piece of like really stepping in when you see something, like building on what Jackie was saying about, hey, if you're noticing someone is like kind of kind of being in the background, like how do you bring them forward?
Yeah. So I just joined BMC. This is my week 8. So I have the new person card, right? And so I can question a lot of things and say, sorry, I'm new, but help me understand this, or have you considered? And so I've entered a company with a fantastic culture, but yet a slightly different culture than what I'm used to, and does many great things, and then also doesn't do things that I've done before. So I have an opportunity to bring up these ideas and be able to share it with my peers and my leadership, if I do see things that folks that might cause folks to feel excluded, or it helps me understand what the culture is internally when I can ask about it, because maybe I'm a little excluded because I haven't been there so long. And so really being able to stay curious, obviously is very important. And then also being active and paying attention, like what Jackie was talking about, is who's involved in this conversation. Maybe why aren't they involved in this conversation, and bringing them in, and whether it's in the middle of it or if it's afterwards, based on how comfortable they might be to be able to have that experience. But even within my last couple of months, I've found a few opportunities already to start mentoring people, just because of what I've heard in meetings, and watching how the organization works and what we need to do to continue to grow. So it's really, I think Jackie said it really well. Like, it isn't, networking is just part of the job, and also sponsoring and mentoring is just part of the job. So I look forward every time, as much as I want to find a technical solution for a hard, complex problem, as much as I want to create good messaging to explain what we do, as I'm still equally on the lookout for ways that I can help people and be of service and help sponsor and mentor people throughout the day.
And Lisa, when you stepped into your role, this was different. I mean, it's a big role, and different than not that you didn't have a big role. You were at a company for a long time, and then stepping into a new company. How was that? And did you have someone that kind of helped you, either recognizing, or you were recognizing people that you were seeing, kind of getting new, just like Amanda was talking about starting in a new position?
Yeah, I think that you quickly learn who you connect with and who's going to speak truth to you. And I can't remember who said it. I mean, it was Jackie, that once people realize that you're open to feedback and that you want to understand the company and the culture, they are going to be much more willing to share that with you. But again, I kind of think about this. You have to be curious. I love that word. And in everything that you do, whether it's networking, when you come to a new company, if you're in a meeting, if you're out meeting with a client, if you're just standing in line waiting for something and you might want to strike up a conversation with someone to hear their story. I think being curious always pays off, and listening more than talking is the other thing that I think is really critical in both a leadership role, when you're new to something or when you're trying to learn about something. So all of those things are critical. Nobody was assigned to me per se when I came to this job, but I have made some really good connections. And I think by just asking a lot of questions, I've been able to learn about the organization and be a part of the organization.
I could talk to all of you for all day. It's so hard to slow this conversation down to we're almost at the end. And I'm thinking about this power of connection and the power of your network. And I know I mentioned it earlier, but some people hadn't arrived yet. But all of you are really here because of the power of my personal network, and working with Naomi and having the conversation with her about how can we make this happen? How can we curate this panel so that it's amazing? And that's really what we do in her C-suite. We're a thriving private network where we engage with amazing speakers like we had today and help lift women up. We are ambitious women. We meet, engage, and thrive in meaningful ways. Many of our members are here. They're talking to each other. And it's so fun to see people reconnecting, even in the chat and giving shout outs. So I love seeing that as well. And if I can be of any help to any of you that are here today, I believe that when we raise one person up, especially women, we raise the tide. So do reach out to me and let me know how I can help serve you and help you. And I want to invite you all to come to our next event. Annie Meehan was here. And it's too bad that I didn't have the slide earlier because she left. She's speaking today. But our next event is May 30th, and I want to invite all of you to come to that. It is Be the Exception, 7 Steps to Transformation. That one is going to be an engaging masterclass. So we kind of alternate. This has been an incredible panel that we had today, but we also do have keynotes and immersive conversations as well. So I hope you'll join us there. And oh my gosh, Amanda, Jackie, Lisa, Blasine, What an incredible conversation today. It has been so wonderful to spend time with you. I know that our attendees have really enjoyed it too, and I'll be sure to share with you in the chat. I know people have asked me about the recording. We will share it out. It won't be today because we have to get the recording put together, but we will be sharing it out. And I'm so glad that we had this time together. Thank you for sharing your wisdom. I know that you've helped so many of our attendees today think about being, connected and all the things. So thank you for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining.